Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. At noon today, the 86th Texas legislative session will begin. Everybody hold on to your wallets. It's a very dangerous time period. We hope not, though, right? We hope for some good conservative legislation coming out of Austin, Texas, and visiting with us right now. We've been taking the last few days, even going back in the last week, really previewing the upcoming legislative session. We'll visit with Matt Makoviak coming up at 9:35 today to get some of the headlines of the legislative session. Joining us right now from the Texas Public Policy Foundation, senior economist with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, Dr. Vance Ginn joining us. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you. How are you doing?
Doing great. We've got, just under 3 hours before the legislature convenes there in Austin, and I'm sure it's something that you and everyone else over at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, y'all been getting ready for this session for a long time.
Yeah, we really have. I mean, you're like you said, the countdown is on. Only 3 hours, so we've got a lot to do. There's, the Texas model is one of limited government, where you limit government spending and taxation and regulation, and we've seen what the benefits have been over a long period of time with more economic growth and job creation than most other states. But there's a lot more that needs to be done when you look at property tax relief, just skyrocketing property taxes across the state, and, in areas still excessive government spending. And so those are things that we've really got to tackle this session.
Well, and that's something you bring up, property tax relief. Let's talk about that first, because this is something that I've noticed about this session. This seems as though now anything could happen, that this is going to be big issues, we're going to have big issues discussed in this session. And just like in the previous session, property tax creep and property tax appraisal, this is going to be a focal point, not only the governor, the lieutenant governor, but also the speaker, the incoming speaker of the House. What is a way not only to get a hold of skyrocketing property taxes, but also to maybe lower some property taxes as well? Is that anywhere included in any legislation that we're seeing pop up?
Well, yeah, I think there's several pieces of legislation that are continuing to be drafted. Right now there's what's called a Ledge Council, and they draft a lot of legislation that's filed, and then you'll see some of those start popping up here and there. And look, there's a couple of what I think are positive steps in the right direction to slowing the growth. When you look at the governor's plan, the 2.5% automatic rollback, which just means that if a local government, let's say the city of Lubbock, wants to raise their property taxes by more than 2.5% in revenue over the next year, that they would need to go to the voters and just say, hey, look, do y'all approve this or not? That allows for voters to have a louder voice in the process. But us at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, we're also looking at ways to lower property taxes by limiting government spending at the state level, right, to, let's say, 4%, and any money above that to go to property tax relief, thereby putting the taxpayer as part of the budget process. And what we've shown is that if you did that, we could eliminate the school maintenance and operation property tax, which is nearly half of your property tax burden within about a decade. So that's talk about real relief.
Yeah, let's talk the governor's plan at the 2.5% cap. Mm-hmm. I think there are a lot of my listeners who would be in favor of that, unless they are a mayor or a city council member or a county commissioner somewhere. You get what I'm saying. There are a lot of elected officials that are not in favor of that type of plan, but a lot of people who are in favor of that type of plan. Is that where this battle is gonna be waged?
It really is. I mean, whenever you think about it, it's the battle seems to be about what's the proper definition of local control. Some would say that local control, you give it to the local officials, and then they should be able to determine what the budget process should be and what the property tax increases should be over time. But what we've seen is that they've just skyrocketed. With right now, they can go up to 8% without any sort of pushback from their voters, other than elections, right? And a lot of times you just have inertia built into a lot of these elections. And so what the 2.5% says is, look, let's just go to the voters. I mean, if these are reasonable reasons to raise property taxes to fund certain government spending, well, then the local officials shouldn't have any problem making that case. And if not, well, then they need to look elsewhere. And, back in the day, the 8% that we have now, which is a rollback rate, that was, back in the 70s, that was a high level of inflation, double-digit levels of inflation. And today, it's less than 2%. So that gets us something closer to the average taxpayer's ability to pay by just getting closer to 2.5%.
Visiting with Dr. Vance Ginn with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, a senior economist with our friends down at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Let's talk about school finance, because this is also going to be another big issue facing lawmakers. And it seems like everyone has a different plan and everyone has a different definition of what adequately funding schools looks like. Everyone has a different definition on this. How do y'all look at this and approach school finance, and how do you visit when other lawmakers visit with you guys? How are you working with lawmakers and crafting a plan?
Yeah, so there was this Texas Commission on Public School Finance has been meeting basically since the last session ended last summer. And, they went through a number of different factors and had a number of testimonies and, really broke this down. And I guess it was a couple of weeks ago now, they had a final report that came out that basically says that, we need to put more money into the classroom. And that's really what we're looking at. I mean, at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, we're not saying that we need new resources. Let's just use the resources, the taxpayer money that we have today, more wisely. Now, that may contribute to a little bit more spending if necessary, but I think the goal should really be there's a lot of waste that's already in the system. Let's make sure that those dollars are used wisely before we go out and spend any new money or raise any taxes. I don't think we need to raise any other taxes. Like I just said, I think we're actually in favor of lowering property taxes, cutting property taxes by just limiting government spending and not raising any taxes. I think that's where it needs to head. And if you get more money in the classroom, look, teachers are the number one thing that bring about better education overall. I mean, that's proven research, other than the parents. I think parents should come first there. And so if we get more money in the classroom, less money to administration and bureaucracy and other things that are being wasted on, I think we'll have a better education system overall.
How can we do that? How can we get and guarantee that more money goes into the classroom?
Well, that's a great question, and I mean that's part of the school finance, the formulas that are put in place. There's what's called the basic allotment that goes out to certain, to students, and then there's all these weights. Well, what they've tried to do within this school finance commission is to simplify the overall formulas and to get rid of some of the weights and put more into the basic allotment. And by doing so, that would put more money directly into the classroom, one would hope. Now, it's difficult to say it would directly go there. I hope that they can find some ways that would say, look, we need more money to go to the classroom. One way you could do that, though, and we're in favor of this, is to increase teacher pay. I mean, increase their pay based on merit. And then that would put more money directly in the classroom.
Yesterday, you had the controller come out and say $119 billion for the 2-year budget. How do we spend that money in a conservative way? Because this is I guess it was higher than expected. The announcement yesterday. How do we make sure the money is spent wisely?
Yeah, and so the Texas economy continues to be strong. Whenever you look at the economic growth, been number one for a couple of quarters now. Job creation has been at the top of the last 12 months. I mean, there's just a lot of economic activity, and that economic activity brings in more tax revenue, for better or worse. But there was an 8.1% increase in general revenue-related funds, which is the one that the legislature will argue they have the most control over. And so what we've done at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, along with 15 other groups of the Conservative Texas Budget Coalition, is we've said, look, the budget should not grow by more than the average taxpayer's ability to pay, according to population growth and inflation, which is about 8%. So the comptroller's numbers would put them right on par with not growing by more than that. But we actually think that the taxpayer should be a part of that process. So when they're looking at all the priorities that they're going to spend money on, whether it's health care, education, transportation, all of those are going to have their hands out wanting more money. We need taxpayers to be a part of that process, and that's where I think where our proposal for property tax relief comes in, is we're saying, look, just limit the spending to 4%. That still allows for $4.4 billion more dollars in new spending this next biennium, and then lose the other 4%, another $4 billion, for property tax relief. That would be an 8% cut in the school maintenance and operation property tax for all Texans across the state. And I think by doing so, we will limit spending while also providing property tax relief.
Visiting with Dr. Vance Ginn with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I believe tomorrow, Texas Public Policy Foundation kicks off the policy orientation where you are going to hear from the governor, the lieutenant governor, and many, many more. What are you hoping to hear and hoping others who are attending this and maybe following along on Twitter, what are y'all hoping to hear from our lawmakers?
Yeah, so we'll have this policy orientation that will start tomorrow. It's a sold-out event, more than 1,100 people that are registered. It's one of my favorite times every year. And so the new speaker, the incoming speaker, Dennis Bonnen, will also be speaking. And so we'll have a lot of great panels. We'll have some on the teacher retirement system. We'll have some on property tax relief and what we need to do there, criminal justice reform, health care reform. I mean, you name it, on the top key issues, we will have a panel on that and with some of the top experts and legislators in those fields. And so I think it's going to be a great time, and I'm always looking forward to it every year.
What are your expectations for the new incoming speaker, Speaker Dennis Bonnen?
I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that Representative Bonnen, soon-to-be Speaker Bonnen, has done a good job as Ways and Means Chair. I've worked with him several times on some key reforms on cutting the franchise tax, the business margins tax, which ultimately needs to be eliminated, and I think he agrees with that. He's also been in favor of property tax relief. I think that there's a lot of key things that we're going to be able to work with him on that will help to improve the lives of Texans, and that's what we're really all about, is how do we bring about more prosperity and more flourishing for Texans, and ultimately what happens in Texas will hopefully influence the rest of the nation and even the world.
Is there an issue that has not really made headlines in the last few weeks building up to this session that you think is going to be a big issue that's not being talked about right now?
So I think one that will need to be talked about more will be our pensions. The teacher retirement system pension, employee retirement system pension, right. Those could end up being a huge burden on taxpayers if nothing is done very soon. We've been writing about this. I have a paper on it on our website, texaspolicy.com, on the Texas retirement system, the teacher retirement system pension overview. And basically, look, there's about $46 billion in unfunded liabilities currently. And if we don't tackle that, that's all going to be put on the back of taxpayers or even higher contributions from teachers. And so we have even a larger problem if we don't do something about that sooner rather than later.
Dr. Vance Ginn, tell folks where they can find out more about the Texas Public Policy Foundation.
Well, thank you for that. TexasPolicy.com is our website. Our Twitter handle is TPPF, and my Twitter handle is Vance Ginn, VanceGinn. And I just thank you for the time today.
Absolutely. We'll visit with you and I'm sure other folks at the Texas Public Policy Foundation throughout the 86th legislative session. And good luck. Have fun out there.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. That's Dr. Vance Ginn with the Texas Public Policy Foundation.